driving down to my town. So many faces, different races and voices.
Alike has given me the opportunity to talk about my friend, my passionate friend. I met Okot when I was only 16, sweet 16. His home is just about 2 kilometers from here, and my home is about 1.5 kilometers from here. But what brought us together is our interest in poetry, our interest in traditional music, traditional dance. And I met Okot even better in very long time ago. In 1968, I was in Senior 5 in Namiliango. I was the president of Uganda Student Writers Association. And Okot organized, he went into exile. He was forced out of Uganda by the former president, Milton Obote, who dismissed him in his absence and technically declared him persona non grata. So he had to leave. He was in Zambia for the 2nd anniversary of the Zambian independence, and he traveled with one great artist, a Tanzanian. When they came back, they landed in Nairobi. On the plane, he read that he couldn't come back to Uganda. And so he stayed in Kenya. But Okot is a graduate of Oxford University, one of the best universities in the world. And when he was a student, he did his fieldwork in Acholi land. He became famous for his poetry at a later stage. But when he came to Gulu as the first director of Makerere Extramural Studies, he organized a festival, an arts festival. That's when I met him. I was in Senior 1. Some of you might have now Senior 2, 3, but I was then in Senior 1. And we were on holidays. I went to Ntare. I'm not afraid to say I'm the OB of the president, so be careful when you talk to me. You should see some presidential material in me as well. You know, when you rub shoulders with big people, you get some feelings from them. That's why we wanted you to rub shoulders with Okot in his absence, in his death, but through listening about him. And Okot's, the first festival took place in Acholi Inn. And Acholi Inn was the home of Acholi culture. And Okot's home was opposite Acholi Inn. Now it is an office. There, his home. So I attended the first festival. We were little boys who were carrying drums and things for the festival. But that is how you get involved. That is how you start learning to be like your mentor. You start by following them. You start by carrying their stools. Start by carrying their guitars and nanga and every musical instrument. You're sent around, and that is it. Just like my relationship with Secretariat also goes back to that time. A Secretariat, next to my home was a place where we used to come, and there was a footpath that we could pass. I went to Gulai School, but we could come through the footpath. Now they've blocked it so that we cannot find any escape. If you are caught by the nuns loitering in the girls' school. And so with that, there's introduction. I got to know Okot better. And he got married to a girl next to my home. So even in his marriage, there was that knowledge that we had of him. Very interesting. young man, very agile, a footballer, an athlete. He played football for Uganda team in 1958. And they beat the English team playing barefooted. That was great. He was also a great athlete. And I think these are some of the qualities that I inherited. I didn't play football for Uganda, but I played rugby for Uganda team. And I was an athlete good enough to run 100 meter. I always ran the fourth leg, the last leg. And we missed going to Olympics by 1 split of a second in 1972 from Makerere. I was then in Makerere. We came second. The police went. And that's where some of you will remember the name Akibwa. Akibwa is my contemporary. If he had been alive, we would have gone for the Olympics together in Germany. He brought us gold. And now there's Olympic Stadium. There's a stadium named after Akibwa. And that was my squad. And here I am, almost 70, not looking much as an athlete or even a footballer, but age is but a number. I still play football with my grandchildren. I used to run with my children, but then now the bones are beginning to stiffen. I can only walk. I cannot run. But let's talk about Okot. Okot was born in 1931, just in Michan here. The house where he was born in a kitchen of one of the teachers, Miss Cave. The mother who lived, some of you know the police post. There is a police post that separates the Catholic sector from the Anglican sector. Where is the first humps? The first hump was put there. Okot's home was just behind there. And the mother was walking to the hospital, but Okot decided, like the real Okot who became Okot in life, he became impatient and started kicking. And the mother had to stop in the kitchen of Miss Cave. That's where Okot was born. If you go to Michan, next to the bishop's house is the house where Okot was born. And he was born there. His father was a catechist teacher in the same place. And so Okot was baptized Jekeri. He had to get a name, Zachariah. But the actual form of it is Jekeri. He was baptized. And one thing that stood out with him, he was very intelligent. And you will not believe that he's a writer, but his best subject was mathematics. Mathematics of all things. Maybe he was already, even then, writing poetry through mathematics, balancing the words. If you read Okot's poetry, there's some mathematical formula that you can see in them. And he was also a member of the choir, in the church choir. That is when his singing career started. That is when his poetry started from the church. And in the past, in the 40s, there was no recorder. For some of you go to church, when there's a choir master, the choir master normally holds a tuning fork that day to get the right tune. In the 40s, Okot's voice became the recorder, and Okot would sing the first verse of the song, then the others would follow. And it is in that relationship that he got to become very interested in writing as well as in singing. Singing and poetry are interrelated. You must be able to sing. That's why our colleagues are here from Kampala to train you in how you will sing your poems, how you will present them. And so it is very important. Okot went to Gulu Primary School, which was started and run by the Church Missionary Societies. And from senior P1 to P6, he was the top or the second best in class. Some of you know Gulu Town very well. There's a hotel called Hotel Roma. The lady who was running the hotel, Tezera Okot, not the wife of Okot, but another Okot, testifies that she was Okot's classmate for the first 6 years in his primary school. And Okot always came top of the class. But there was something that in him that made him different from the other children. He was liked by all the missionaries and the teachers in the school because he was intelligent, he was an athlete, he participated in the district sports, in the primary school, he was in the choir, he was a very good singer, and by then he had already started writing songs in Acholi. He didn't call them poetry, but they were songs. So you can see that it starts from the beginning. But there was also something very commercial about him. Interestingly, his father, although he was a teacher in the catechist school, but he also supplemented his income by growing sugarcane. You know, there's a valley between the mission and the Catholic school here, or the boundary, St. Joe. Then that valley on the other side was occupied by the Protestants, and Okot's father utilized that land to grow sugarcane especially. And the tricky thing, the interesting thing, the commercial thing about Okot would tell everybody that he was intelligent because he chose a lot of sugarcane. He had enough sugar in his blood, and that sugar generated the intelligence in him. Try it and see if it works. I used to be told it was the eggs from the fish that would make people clever. But is that what it does? He's just looking outside. This is his favorite. But try sugarcane. And Okot did that for two reasons. One, to encourage his colleagues to work hard like him, but more, especially, to make the students buy the sugarcane from his father. Wasn't that clever? You know, use yourself as a good example. I'm clever because I eat sugarcane. And during break, he would have a long piece that he could share. But he would tell the others, go buy your own. It's very rude also. Go buy your own. Don't sponge on money. If a fly fell in Okot's beer in later life, he would take it out, suck out the beer from the fly, and throw it away. Go buy your own beer. Don't drink mine. So that's the kind of friend, the kind of man we're talking about today. From Gulu Primary, Okot went to Gulai School, just next door. But now, let me step back a little. Educational system has changed. When I went to school, you studied P1 to 6, then you did it wasn't called PLE, but you did the exams. If you passed, then you went to junior secondary school. And the junior secondary school was 2 years. So in a total of 8 years before you went to senior. But when you went to senior in Okot's time was only 3 years. When you were in the third year, you had covered what you normally cover in 4 years. For example, I did senior in Cambridge exams when I was in senior 3. They introduced a combined system of senior 4, senior 3 doing exams together. And it was experimented for 2 years, then they stopped. Uganda now has gone back to 4 years of secondary. But Okot was in Gulai School. And it is in Gulai School that Okot probably learned to become what he became later in life. Very argumentative, very talkative, very brave. He was not afraid of people. But he always fought for his rights in the correct way. Not physically fighting anybody, but using his intelligence to support whatever he wanted to do. And that's something that he learned from Gulai School. Gulai School, unlike St. Joe, maybe unlike Secretariat, was built on a British system of education. And especially one particular school, public school in England called Rugby, very difficult. The students who came from there were tough. They were trained. By the time they went to senior, they already knew what they wanted. And nobody could. But then what also helped them is the system of bullying. I don't know whether it is still here, this in the schools, maybe in some of the boarding schools, where the senior ones, when you come to senior one, you're bullied. You become someone's technically slave. You carry water for them. You wash for them. You do this and that. But then it was a strong system. But it helped to build individuals. It helped to build a character. If you were shy, people would ride over you. But if you stood your ground, even if you were just a little senior one boy, you still, would get away with it. But that is it. In terms of training, that was part of the character training. So Okot went through this kind of training. I did the same. But when I went to Ntare, there was already no bullying in Ntare. It was a government school, very prestigious, the only school at the time. Now there are other pretenders that they are also there, including Sacred Heart and Laibi and all the other schools. But Ntare was always the school. And Okot went to Budo, King's College Budo. After Gulai School, he went to King's College Budo. He was very young, and some of you will probably, if you have not read, will have read his book, Lakta. That's the first book he wrote. He published in 1953. In 1953, he was only 21 years old, 22, but he had published a book, a big novel that's read by almost everyone. It's translated into English, called White Teeth. It's not a school text, so you probably don't know it, but it is important. If you want to know more about Okot, start by reading his novel. When you have time during the holidays, his daughter, the first daughter, Agnes, has revamped the book, which there's a new a copy of it which is available. You can buy it either from the bookshop or somewhere else. But there's Okot in Budo. Okot's going to Budo was a milestone in his life. King's College Budo was meant only for the children from the royal families, mainly from Buganda, from Bunyoro, from Ankole, and Okot was one of the first Mukopi, non-royal, who went. So he always introduced himself as a bush boy from the north, a bush boy. And so he became one of the favorite of the new headmaster called Mr. Cobb, who also came to Budo at about the same time. But Okot stood out for many reasons. One, he was a great footballer and an athlete, combining the two, and he was a great singer. He knew how to sing and also compose. His first poetry, which won him an award, was a poem that he composed called Achan. And he composed this poem out of disappointment. By the time Okot went to Budo, already girls were also being admitted. And there was a beautiful Acholi girl who also came. Okot was in senior 2, she was in senior 1, and Okot fell in love with her. But unfortunately, she was from a royal family. And Okot is a son of a catechist, whose father grew sugar cane, sold vegetables to supplement his income. And so there was no way he could mix with someone from a royal family. They were in the same school because of being intelligent, being clever, but not in terms of finances. And this is a school for prince and princess. Okot was there with probably one pair of shorts, not trousers, and one pair of shoes. And so this girl said, "Shame on you. How even dare you talk to me? You're from a poor family. You're from a very poor family." Usually when I teach my children, my students in Gulu University, I ask a beautiful one like her, "How many cows are you worth?" If somebody proposed to marry you, not him, he's got too much beard, but somebody else, how many cows do you think you are worth? You're a Miss University.
I am worth than just a cow. My worth is greater than, just a cow that someone would give. But the cows or something they would give to my parents is just appreciation. And so I am meant to bring out the worst in the inside of me to impact the world positively and not to be paid for.
But still, that's a good answer, but still, your father will not take it. He will not take it. He will insist on a couple of millions of shillings, a few cows, a few goats. Yeah? So your worth, that's your self-worth. But in terms of, cash, they will ask for it. The Mr. Good will not take you for mahala, for free. He will have to pay. So anyway, this girl rejected Okot. And Okot was so disappointed. It was the first time anybody, any female, had said no to him. And so he went to his room like a good composer, singer, and composed a song. And the song is called a chant. Chana, chana, willow mumina, chana, chana, willow mumina, iquera nonica, carena pipino, iquera nonica. You're rejecting me because I'm poor. It's not my fault. It is not my fault. My parents are poor. My father is a catechist teacher. My mother is a domestic worker. It's not my fault. But wait, I will grow. So you see the second name of Okot, Okot pa Bitek. Bitek, Bitegi, I'll grow, I'll become strong. And so, from the very time he was only in senior 2, he already knew he had a future. He knew what he wanted for the future. If you have got ambition, don't let that ambition die. She just told us hers. Her worth is not quantifiable. You cannot cash it. You cannot monetize it. But we who are responsible for bringing you into the world, we say now, when the boy comes, we say, okay, you love her, Love. That's your story. Our story is give us the cows and the animals. Then you can have her and you can do your own thing. I'm not speaking like Okot. You can do your own thing, your own way. So Okot, this disappointment turned out to be the beginning of his poetic career. Okot and the Nightingale, that Okot was a founder member. This was the choir in Buddo, the Nightingales, and Okot perfected this poem. The poem was based partly or sung to the tune of Mozart. Mozart is one of the classical writers, and Okot was being taught by one of the teachers who taught music. She liked Mozart. She would invite Okot to the house, and he would listen to the music. So he tuned his composition to this Mozart song, and he presented it at a cultural festival. Believe it or not, the song was voted the best original composition. And the governor of Uganda in 1948 drove all the way from Entebbe to Buddo, where Okot was presented with a gift as the best composer singer. And Buddo became famous because of Okot. So Okot's life began as a writer, as a poet, when he was only in senior 2. And then he completed senior 3. He set for Cambridge. He didn't do very well because he spent most of his time in extracurricular activities, especially athletics and choir and singing. So he couldn't come to Makerere, unfortunately. Makerere would finish senior 4. There was no A-levels. You come straight to the university and do 4 years. So Okot was a disappointment to the head teacher in Buddo because he had hoped so much that Okot would return to Buddo as a teacher after his training in Makerere as a teacher. But he went to Kakoba Teacher Training College in Mbarara. Now, Kakoba Teacher Training College is a university, Kakoba University in Mbarara. Okot did 2 years there from 1950 to 1951. In 1951-52, he graduated as a teacher, grade 3 teacher, and he was posted to Sir Samuel Becker. That's where he started his teaching career. But his writing career developed from the song into the full novel called Lakta, which he wrote based on the theme. The theme was poverty. The theme was rejected love. He couldn't get this woman because he was too poor. And incidentally, some of you live in Gulu. The woman who rejected Okot is the owner of Unifax. She is the owner of Unifax. Yeah? Has anybody went to Unifax? The lady died a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah? You know Unifax? Yeah, your former head teacher rejected my friend. But it gave him that poetic start in his life. Because traditionally, they actually compose as singers. Those who played the nanga, the young boys were not allowed to play nanga. Because one of them, again, was like a court. He was rejected by a young woman, and he locked himself in his house. He played his music, and he just died. He didn't commit suicide. He just pined away. Life just got out of him. So the actually leadership stopped young people from playing the nanga. So you can see the effect on Okot. But Okot used that theme in his first novel. And so the first novel reflects what Okot. But he also brought it in. The novel also was addressed to the traditional leaders and to parents who had already seen money economy had come in the 1950s. People were now buying and selling in money, not doing barter trade. They were selling in money. So people started charging a lot of money as dowry for their daughters. So Okot was saying the main character fails to raise money to pay for the bride price, which was 1,000 shillings, not 1 million shillings, 1,000 shillings. And many of them couldn't. So this young man went to look for a job in Kampala. He can't find a job. He goes to Jinja, gets a job in the sugar factory, at Madvani's sugar factory. After working there for some time, he's raised a bit of money. But then, because he was very kind to others, he became the head man in a group. And he became a representative of the younger group. Then, when you went to work in Jinja, you signed a contract, and you couldn't leave until you completed your contract. Now, this young man helped someone to leave the work, and a Vlango man accused him, no problem, but let me say it, there has always been that issue between the Choli and the Langi. Now, the Lango man tricked the Okeja Ladwong. He used his address in Jinja instead of the address from the village. So Okeja was technically dismissed from his job, and he had to leave. But then he had collected a bit of money, and he wanted to come back. He started his journey. Misfortune befell him in Kampala. He lost all the money. It was stolen at the bus station. He had paid for the ticket. He finally walked the 15 kilometers or miles from the last bus stop where he had paid to Gulu, and he was in Michan. There's in Okot's father's house. They were related, and Okot heard the story, the suffering of this young man. He transformed it into a novel. But the novel also he writes about himself, his first experience in Kampala with the fast-moving cars. Very difficult, very challenging. But that novel speaks to the young people. It speaks to the elders. Let's not sell our daughters, okay? Let us give them. When I got married some 50 years ago, I was a young boy when I got married because, the woman was just too beautiful. But you know how much I paid? I paid 1,000 shillings, which is now equivalent to 10 million shillings. And I paid only 900 I still owe my father-in-law 100 shillings, which is about probably 1 million. But that's 50 years ago. He's not going to ask me for it. He now lives with me. I've done so much for the family. But that's the hardship. And now young people, quite a lot of young people are committing suicide, isn't it? Because they cannot afford to pay the bride price, which is too high. So that was Okot's first novel. And Okot, from the training school in Barara, he taught in training, came to to South-Becker. South-Becker was funded as a government school, where it is now. It is the same status as Ntare. Ntare was also a school, Ntare School, South-Becker, Lango College, and then you were other schools that were also there. But Okot taught English, religious studies, and music. And while in South-Becker, he wrote the South-Becker anthem, which is still sung up to today. Are you a graduate of South-Becker? You are. You still sing the same song. And that was composed in 1954 or 53 when Okot was in South-Becker. But it's also in South-Becker that he started writing Song of Lawino. His mother was a great composer-singer. She was well known in the entire vicinity, and she was his mentor. In poetry, we call her the muse. His muse, M-U-S-E. She helped him to write. Each time she composed a new song, she would invite him from the school. There were no borders, there were no cars. So you walk from South-Becker, and Okot would come through the city, through Gulu town, to his mother's home. And it is in that walking, coming to his home, that one day he saw a beautiful girl, a nurse at Gulu Hospital. He fell in love with her and married her 2 years later. But his poetry, writing, his mother was his best friend. And Okot was an only child in the family. And he was a boy. He was a boy at that. So that relationship with his mother became even so strong that sometimes his father became jealous. That the mother paid more attention to him than to him as the father. But that helped Okot, because each time Okot then took it upon himself to write and compete with his mother. So he started composing We Paraweno in 1952-53 when he came to Gulu. And he wrote 36 pages. He took it to her. He read it to her. She was very happy, but then said, "Oh, what a shame. There is no tune to it. You can't sing it." And he said, "Well, this is my thing." And from the 36 pages, when he went to England with the football team, he took it with him and he worked on it. But it took almost another 16 years before Song of Lawino became a publishable thing in 1966. And the Acholi version was published 3 years later, in 1969. By then, Okot was living in Kisumu, in Kenya. He had left Uganda. And that is when I was in S6. And Okot organized a festival, Kisumu Arts Festival, similar to what he had organized in Gulu. As the president of the Writers Club, I joined the few of us who had traveled to Kisumu. We spent a whole week, and it consolidated our friendship. It also introduced me to other Kenyans who eventually became my friends as well. Okot's fame started in 1966 with the publication of Song of Lawino. The Luo version, the Acholi version, the publishers mistook it and took a whole bundle to Kisumu, thinking that the Jaluos of Kenya are the same as the Acholi of Uganda. There's a technical difference, dialectal differences. So the books were not sold, and eventually they were brought to Uganda Bookshop in Kampala, and they were sold. Many people bought the book. Many people read the book because the book spoke about them. The two characters, Lawino, representing the African traditional culture, the Acholi culture, and Ochol, the new European culture, because he was educated, and people saw that Lawino said what was in their hearts. So when you go around, people will be talking about Lawino, people will be talking about Ochol. Even those who don't know how to read were listeners. They made it, the poetry became singable. What he couldn't do with his mother, people read and took interest in it. And our two friends here are here to help you to see how you can turn your written text into performance. And that is what happens to Lawino. Song of Lawino is almost 60 years old, published in 66. In 2016, we celebrated 50 years of Lawino. Okot has been dead since 1982, but Song of Lawino is still going strong. And we had a big conference in Makerere. I made my presentation similar to this, and other people made presentations. And his late friend, some of you will have read writings by David Rubadiri, was there. Arthur Gakwandi was there. Austin Bukenya, the author of The Bride, was there. And it was a great presentation. Okot left Uganda in 1968. He stayed in Kenya for 10 years. He taught at the University of Nairobi. While in Kenya, he wrote the two other poems, Song of Prisoner and Song of Malaya. This was part of his work output when he went to America, University of Iowa, the Writers' School. He wrote those. But Okot is not only written poetry, he's also written other books. Religion of the Central Luo, which talks about the people of Acholi, the religion of the Acholi, and African religion in Western scholarship, then other collections. But he is best known for Song of Lawino. And that is how you meet Okot, the author. East Africa became known because of Song of Lawino. It has been published now in 30, translated into 30, maybe 35 by now. I'm talking about 2016, when we were looking at Lawino at 50. But we launched the Luganda translation of it, but it's been translated in 30 different languages. And in the BBC, there are 100 books in the world. The Song of Lawino ranks number 66. And then Achebe's, of course, Things Fall Apart is top of the books from Africa. But Okot is number 66 out of 100. That's a good recording. The last books in the last 100 years. BBC in 2015 put out this. Not 2015, it was 2018. And it's great that we remember Okot. So this is the one, our mentor. We want you to become the Okot of the future. He said it already. There's an Okot in the making. And the girls, don't be left behind. This is a gender-free world where we don't go, male, female. We are almost all the same. We look at that. So my job is to present Okot to you. I'll give you this. I put it in a PowerPoint form. The machines refuse to talk, so that's okay. I've done the talking. Thank you very much, David.
Let's give another very powerful round of applause to Professor Charles.
moving down to my town. So many faces, different races and bones.